What's this, episode 5? I think this will be episode 5. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the Matt and Shane show. We've gone for a little different look on the backgrounds here. You can see down there. That's my Instagram page and my website. And you can see on Shane's one, the other side, there's his Instagram page and his website. This whole mirroring thing makes it difficult.
We'll figure it
My
out.
logo's up at the side as well. So today we got a special subject. So today we're going to talk about what makes coaches great, specifically in boxing, but maybe with a little mention to some other areas as well. But what makes boxing coaches specifically great, and the details of that. So Shane, do you want to start us off then, buddy?
Yeah, so for me, it's unique as I'm an inspiring coach. I take a lot of cues from the greats, but I'm not great myself. I think I'm a good coach. I do my very best, but it's in my interest to try to be like the greats, right? So I am always curious when I find a better coach, like I consider you to be, Matt. I want to know what your opinion is. Like, how do you distinguish? Because it helps me further my ability to see what's going on. Uh, I want to ask about a couple of the greats. So let's see here. Uh, what to you, let's say Angelo Dundee, you've got Freddie Roach, you've got, of course, Customato. Those are just some of the household names. You and I have spoken in length about other coaches that you know of quite personally. Oh, one for me, not so well known Tom Yankilo. I'm a huge fan of these great coaches out there. You know, a couple that don't really have that household moniker behind them, but what is it to you that signals a great coach and what sets apart like just an average like PT and a real dedicated good boxing coach?
Um, First and foremost, there's a big difference between PTing somebody with boxing for fitness and understanding that you're coaching somebody to box and to compete. So there has to be a very clear um, pathway established from the outset of the training. So a good boxing coach, first and foremost, will work primarily from a technical standpoint. Everything will begin from technique. It will begin from good fundamentals and good foundations, and then it will build upon that. Starting from zero, of course, starting from the ground up, starting from scratch is the hardest way to coach. And in fact, very few coaches have successfully done that through history. Even some of these greats that we're mentioning, they started off with fighters that were already established, and they haven't had an enormous amount of success from the ground up. So it's interesting always when you consider the greats, and I think what really defines somebody being great as a boxing coach is their ability to start with somebody who is, say, a 12, 13-year-old young boy or girl, and develop them and mold them into a world-class competitor that then has a successful professional career. And I think that should be the biggest distinction when you're discussing who is great. That's not to say there's not great trainers who don't do that, but I generally feel that those that have the biggest impact on fighters tend to do it in that manner.
I think you've got a great point there. I've kind of noticed that in my journey that with my younger fighters that have the greatest natural talent, you kind of realize very quickly that there's a serious amount of life investment that goes into making a Tank Davis. And the coaches that are responsible for that may not ever get the recognition that they truly deserve for the sacrifices they've made to make sure that that fighter's journey, sees its fruition. But I, I can't help but feel like it's a tricky but fun thing to engage with. If you don't commit to it, like if you're just doing it for their fitness, if you're just trying to make sure that they're as in shape as possible, it's kind of easier to pull yourself away from it. But a good coach is going to tie themselves to that human being. They're going to make sure their journey is complete. They're going to try. I even said to a couple of my fighters, I said, I don't care if you guys leave the gym. I'm going to keep an eye on you. I'm going to make sure that As a product of my gym, even if you're not here, if I notice that you're not doing something too good, I'm going to be like, hey, is everything okay? Like, do you need
Well,
some help?
there's definitely a larger portion of success as a coach is in the human element because there's a lot of technically good coaches who understand boxing, probably less so now, but there's an awful lot of really good technical coaches. But the human element is what separates those coaches
Those
from
good coaches like Customato's, some of those guys, they really went to find somebody, scouted them for their natural talent, and then committed to them. And I just think that's a really
absolutely.
impressive thing. They deserve the credit for that.
Thing with Customato is his success was limited to three guys really, um, and he didn't have an enormous rep. I would say probably the best example internationally of any coach who has done that again and again and again with a lot of very successful fighters would be Brendan Ingle at the Winkelbank Gym here in Sheffield.
Yep.
Nazim Hamid, world champion. Johnny Ingle, Johnny Nelson, world champion. Um, uh, Junior Witter, world champion. Kid Galahad, world champion. Um, Ryan Rhodes, European, British champion. Um, I mean the list is enormous. There's
Yeah,
there's a load of
wow.
names there that I haven't mentioned, and all of those have started with him from basically small children. They've gone on to have success in the amateurs and then turned professional. Obviously, when he passed away a few years back, it was a sad loss for British boxing and for all of those fighters. And funnily enough, the gym has not been anywhere near as successful since his departure. So
So this is
um,
kind of what I wanted to boil into, and this is perfect. So what is it that set his coaching apart, and what is it that's missing from the gym now that was really from his coaching? What was it that he was so good at?
Again, I believe it's the human element. I don't think it's anything to do with the technical element because the technical element can only teach you how to do that technique. What it can't do is it can't empower you. It can't give you confidence. It can't encourage and motivate and give you discipline. And it can't bring you back down to the ground when you're starting to reach a little bit too high and get beyond your station. It can't make you understand the reality of what you're facing and the psychology of that situation. And that's where exceptional coaches do excel because they are fantastic at understanding the psychology, at getting the best out of the person, not just the fighter. Because I can go out there with the skill set of Floyd Mayweather, but if my head isn't right, I'm going to lose anyway because the other guy is gonna have that mindset, even if they haven't got the ability, and they're going to beat me. And that's how many times have we seen that happen in boxing?
I think
In times.
when it was something that was poignant to me, the Mayweather fight, McGregor Mayweather fight, where McGregor at the end said what caught him off guard the most was his discipline. He said, "I thought I was going to break him. I thought I was going to crack him, and he's just so disciplined. He stuck to his game plan." So, and that all comes from the confidence of coaching. Of course, it's Mayweather we're talking about. He knew by then exactly what he needed to do, but that comes from knowing when your coach says do this and you trust him and it just
Well,
playing out over
well,
and over again.
if you listen to Mayweather in the corners and you listen to Roger talking to him or his dad talking to him, he always follows instructions. He's so coachable for a man who's arguably the best boxer of the last 20 years. He's unbelievably coachable. And that only happens if your coach gives you good advice, is trustworthy, is loyal, and has your best interests at heart and understands what you're capable of and expects the best of you. This is another thing, a lot of coaches are content to let their fighters, let their boxers kind of middle their way through it and sort of muddle through and do whatever they can and never really reach their potential. And it's important from a coaching perspective to drive people onwards to be the best that they can be. That may only be a very average professional boxer, but that's much better than being a very bad one. And it's about getting the best out of people so they're proud of what they have become and what they can achieve and do.
So what would be more important for you if you went into a gym, say you were going to hire a coach under you to handle some classes. If his technical skill was a little low, but his ability to engage the human element was high, as opposed to somebody that was just an absolute encyclopedia about technical skill and rotation and hand placement and everything, but was just a complete dull of a human being. Somebody that people don't really like to work with. Which one would you rather
I
have?
mean, it's an easy decision because I'm that encyclopedia in my opinion. And so
Very helpful.
I can teach anybody that comes and joins me everything they need to know about boxing. I can
True.
do that. I don't, but what you can't give people that human element. You can't teach people to have the empathy, the understanding, the psychology, to have the personability to be able to talk to other people and engage them in a way that's going to bring the best out in them. You can't teach people that. It's not possible. They can improve, but I can't give you that ability because generally, by the time people have established that encyclopedia of knowledge that they think they have or that they may well have, they've already got the arrogance and the conceited character that prevents them from ever being personable and really getting the best out of others because they have too higher opinion of themselves.
Yeah, that makes it rough. All right, so let's shift back a little bit. I, I, you have a little bit of a mix of both. So I've redefined my entire view of boxing based off of your foundation and your fundamentals, and it's made me way better at boxing. But you're also an open person, straight to the point, easy to understand, no mixing words. So you're a polite little balance of both, man. It's nice.
Well,
Um,
I think it's important to have a balance because equally you don't want to just be able to invest in the character and have poor boxing knowledge. You have to have a bit of both. And I was lucky that I had a fantastic coach whose boxing knowledge was exceptional, so it's transferred into me. So yeah,
who
thank you.
Who was your boxing coach? Speaking
My
of great,
boxing coach is a man called Trevor Francis, who was a good British pro, boxed all over the world, boxed in Australia, boxed in Italy. He was an ABA champion here, a national champion here, and he worked with a couple of really good fighters, one of whom was his son, Dean Francis, who was British Commonwealth European champion in his time. Um, Myself, a couple of other very good amateur boxers, and a couple of guys called Steve Bendel and Alan Foster, who both were good pros as well. Um,
let's shift over to America a bit. Is there any American coaches, modern American coaches you'd like to make mention to and give them flowers for their skills and their fighters?
well, I think there's a lot of good coaches on Instagram, but what you don't have is the visibility of how successful they really are in the world of boxing. Um, with regards to actual boxing coaches that we know are active, my favorite active coach is Robert Garcia. I think the number of world champions he's trained, the number of different styles he's trained, the number of hard fights and competitive bouts that he's had to enter into as the coach. I think you can't dispute his greatness. Um, I think from an Instagram perspective, most people on here probably know Mustafa's boxing, Mustafa Meekins. He's a very good coach. And again, it comes to that human element. He seems to draw the best out in people who haven't necessarily had the best of opportunities in the world, and that's a great thing to do. And also, he has a really clear um, package of fundamentals and skills that he believes is the way forward. And so it's good to see him kind of cementing that in people's minds. And the thing about boxing is, and boxing coaching is, as I've told you before in our personal discussions, in boxing there can be no singularity. There is no single way of doing anything that is absolutely irrefutably correct. There can't be because there's far too many variables in this sport for that to ever be the case. Even Floyd Mayweather, whose style was exceptional, had to change it a couple of times. He had to make adaptations to beat people. And that's always going to be the case. And the
It's
greatest fighters
tremendously,
have to be adaptable, and
it's
that comes from good coaching.
tremendously it's so freeing when you know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's this desire when you're chasing knowledge and fighting to find the one way. And when you can accept that it's actually a lot more fluid and reasonable. My body's not your body. Man, to have a coach that understands that is
Yeah.
Incredibly
And
valuable.
even more important than my body isn't your body is my mind is not your mind. And therefore,
Yeah,
my personality traits, my characteristics, my
aggression, timing.
mentality, my exactly, it's all going to change. It's all going to be different, dependent on the fighter. And you have to be capable of understanding that. And again, it comes back to that human element, understanding the person that you are teaching, as opposed to just trying to teach them all of the fundamentals to get them perfect. Now, obviously, I want to do that. But if I have a guy who has a lot of flair, a lot of charisma, he's not going to want to be constrained within this tight box, keeping everything here, trying to work. Is not going to benefit him, and in fact, that's gonna eventually hold him back because you're going to be taking away from the elements of his personality that enhance his ability, his athleticism, um, his flair, and so you have to enable those people to move away from the fundamentals because otherwise you're limiting their capabilities, and in fact you're constraining them. And the same is true of somebody who may be a little bit introverted, who may be a little bit more passive as a person, chuck them hands up, teach them to work from that high guard, winky right style, nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, everything nice and simple and effective. Be robotic about it, and that's going to benefit them because it's a lot more simple for them to process, and they don't have to step outside of that being. They don't have to become something that they're not. And I think that's a really important thing to understand and a really good point.
So yeah, I was about to say, I think that is a really good point. I was bringing this up in the gym just the other day. I've got a couple of brothers. I call kind of consider them my brawler brothers. Two brothers that have just been banging it out with each other naturally in their household, and they come into the gym, and when they throw a punch, they reach back into the bar to grab something off the shelf, and that's what they launch at you. And it's natural to see all that wind up, and it's cool. But it's predictable and it can be countered heavy. But here's the thing, it lands. So I tell them, you notice how I've never really told you to stop it, because why would I? If 8 out of 10 times you commit to it, it lands on the other person's face. My responsibility is now to make that safer for you to engage with it and use it. Because I want the other kids to see it too and get the confidence to throw when they need to throw. And it helps everybody in the gym, but I'm not going to go in there and go, it doesn't look the way I want it to look. It doesn't look the way that I throw the punch, so you shouldn't do that. It's
Well,
for
listen, if you were trying to keep everything perfect, Marcos Maidana would have never got anywhere. There was a guy called Carlos Mauser. I don't know if any of the kind of boxing names out there will remember Carlos Mauser. He may have been the ugliest style of boxing you'll ever see in your life, and yet he was a world champion. An incredibly powerful, powerful man who boxed like he'd never put a pair of gloves on half the time. And yet he was hurting people. And often the unconventional nature of people's punches is a big challenge for people who come from a conventional boxing background. So, as you say, it's more about, in that instance, it's more about the ability to augment what people do well and to secure and reinforce the things that they don't do well so that they are a little bit safer and a little bit more capable of overcoming those people. So yeah, fantastic way of approaching it. And that's again something that the best coaches in history have all been able to do, and that's to work with different styles of fighter to enhance the good and to improve the bad so that they kind of become more complete. I wanted to mention a couple of other names because we obviously talked about Customato. You mentioned Angelo Dundee. You mentioned Freddie Roach. We've got Eddie Futch. Eddie Futch, one of the greatest trainers of all time. Worked with Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Riddick Bowe, and just to name a few names. And amongst those other kind of guys that you've got of course my favorite coach. I'll see if you remember who I'm talking about. I'll see if you remember who I'm talking about. Who's my favorite coach?
Robert Garcia.
No, no, not modern coach of all time.
Oh, oh. Oof. It's blanking. I don't have it.
The man from the Kronk gym, Emanuel Steward. Emanuel
Oh,
Steward, without a doubt. I mean, Manny Steward arguably has trained the broadest and most varied spectrum of fighters you could ever want to see. He's worked with everyone from Miguel Cotto to Vladimir Klitschko to Tommy Hearns to McClellan to Tony. All of these guys that are immensely different stylistically, and yet he had success with, nigh on everybody he worked with. Andy Lee, another completely different style there, you know. And I think that's greatness. The ability to have somebody come to you with the style that you aren't necessarily familiar with or that you haven't developed, and then to make that even better. And Eddie Futch now strategically and mentally an exceptional coach. You know, taught his guys to box with a mentality that set them above, that set them a level above their opponents. So again, both of those guys, fantastic coaches, and it still comes back to the same thing, the human element. You know, it's not just about teaching boxing and giving people fundamentals. It's about impacting their life in a way that they trust you enough to do as you say, to listen and to believe in themselves the way you believe in them. And that's a big thing as well. You know, you have to prove that they are worthy to themselves of your belief.
Have you ever heard of the Michelangelo effect? It's an often studied phenomenon that occurs in coaching and positions of authority. All right, so Michelangelo, he sculpted, right? So he would start off with just a brick of marble, a huge chunk of stone. And by the time he was done with it, he would create a masterpiece. But to everybody else that saw that chunk of stone, it was just a worthless piece of rock. To us, to coaches, when we look at our fighters, we see the artistry inside the stone. And as we give our advice and we give our little changes, it's like we're taking our chisel and hammer and knocking away. And yep, we're
Yeah, I like
slowly.
that. That's very good. I like that
If
one.
you believe in our image, I know it when I see my fighters. Like they might not know it in themselves, but just from my own experience, what I've been able to push through, if they can believe in what I know that they can do, it'll make my job so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's your responsibility. It's your responsibility as the coach to find a way of letting them see in themselves what you see in them. And it's not always easy. And again, it comes down to the difference in psychology and mentality with different people. And the ability to give people belief in themselves is an enormous benefit. And you know, outside of the boxing world, you've got Vince Lombardi, who was one of the greatest kind of motivators and coaches of all time, I would say, in terms of the manner in which he kind of empowered his athletes. And a lot of the methodologies from other sports, you know, that can be transferred well into boxing. I think people see boxing
And
and
vice
combat sports
versa.
as completely unique. Um, and actually, the mentality and mindset is the same across the board. You know, it's all about having the discipline to train hard, having the focus and the coachability, having the uh, can't think of the word now. Persevering through challenges and challenging yourself so that you keep trying to get better all the time. And every great sports person has done that, and every great coach has found a way to pull those things out of their athletes.
Some days in the gym, I'll ask the guys, I'm like, hey, do you guys know what we're actually training today? And I'm like, is it cardio? And some of them have picked up on it by now. We're not training to have a bigger gas tank. I'm training them to learn how to persevere and keep going and keep driving. I said, that's what we're trying to get to, guys. That's the fun of it. I want you to embrace with that and engage with that. Like, let's just train our ability,
Well, the fitness
keep
is a
going and keep pushing.
byproduct of that, isn't it? That
Yeah.
cardiovascular fitness that you're talking about is a byproduct of that. And the mentality is far more powerful in the long run because when that gas tank's gone and they're absolutely exhausted in a fight, it's not their physicality that will enable them to win the fight. It's all about the mindset, you know. And it's you know how many elite kind of ultra athletes do you see who will say themselves, you know, the fitness is nothing to do with it. It's all about the mentality. It's all about, you know,
Yes.
running 100 miles across the desert. It's all about the mindset, you know. And you can be the fittest guy in the world, but if your mentality isn't right, listen to David Goggins talk about all the things that he's done, and he'll say exactly that. It's all in the mind. There is no limitation upon what you're capable of that
World
you haven't placed
champions,
upon yourself.
world champions are made from people who learned to be good at doing the things they didn't want to do.
Yeah, nice. I like that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And the other thing is having the dedication to do those things again and again and again and again. I mean, a lot of people in the gym, they'll come in and say, right, we're going to work on this because you suck at it. And they'll go, okay, cool, yeah. And then you do it, and then they think
One.
that's it. They think they're done.
Yeah.
They think, oh yeah, but we did that last session. Yeah, I know, but you're still not great at it. We need to build it. We need to improve. Um, and that's important.
I
So,
used to say, like, if I've given you something to do, I want you to keep doing it until I come and tell you to do something else. Like,
oh,
but
100%.
until I see what I wasn't seeing before, like, until I see the thing I need to see, I need you to
Absolutely.
keep doing it. And more than likely, I know what you need to be doing in order to get better at it. So it was
It's so
whatever I last told
frustrating.
you to do.
It's
Like,
so
keep doing it.
frustrating to give somebody a drill or a skill or something to work on, and they can only sustain their focus on improving that thing for, a minute of a 3-minute round. They
Oh,
start making the same mistakes again and again and again. And I know, remember, look, we spoke about it's not about perfection, everybody is different, blah, blah, blah. That's all true. But fundamentally, there are still things that need to be corrected. Otherwise, even with your character, even with your personality, even with your athleticism, you're still going to get knocked out.
yeah.
It's a real fine line. It's a real balance. It's a real kind of high wire trapeze to walk between enabling people to be the best personal version of themselves, but also making sure that they can actually box. They can
How
actually
many
do the thing.
people, how many people have you trained and really learned to care about that were hindered by their personality? That
Every single
got to
one.
be good at fighting. Yes, I'm guilty of it. I do it. They could have been so good at fighting, but then get hindered by that lack of trust they have in you, their own personal flaws and stuff like that. It kind of sucks. It hurts.
The the other thing with coaching, and something that I think probably a lot of great coaches have as well, is they don't take things too personal, because lots of great coaches have been left, returned to. The thing again is that human element, understanding that as long as you are giving the fighter the best of you, then you're doing all you can for them. And I think that's a big thing in relation to what you were just saying. I haven't just segued randomly into something else. In relation to what you were just saying, it's if you are giving a person the best of yourself, the best information, the best level of empathy, the best understanding, the best um, motivation, drive, and discipline, if you're doing that, then the failure is on their part, not yours. And you can't blame them for that, because you can't address every single aspect of that human being's psyche, of that human being's physicality. You can't fix something that you can't access. And so, that's why it's so important to find somebody. If you really want to make a world champion, find somebody who is willing to open up every door for you and give themselves to you entirely, because otherwise you will always fall short, because they will always fall short. And obviously, inevitably, as the coach, you're held responsible.
Yeah. And it helps to get them young. But yeah, man, we have a little bit of time left. This is going to be a random segue, so pardon me. Back on the topic of great coaches, man, that was a fun little conversation right there. What separates the great coaches from the past from current greats? What are there greats now that might surpass those of the past?
No.
Things like that. No.
No, I don't think there is, because I don't think boxing is the sport there was. I think there's many that are equal to, Freddie Roach, Robert Garcia, Manny Steward's a relatively recent coach comparative to some of those other names. Ray Arcel, Lou Duva, Angelo Dundee, Eddie Futch, George Benton, all of these other names. They're kind of historically great coaches. Teddy Atlas, I suppose, would kind of bridge that gap a little bit between those two generations. Customato, as you said. But modern coaches, it's a different world. It's a different sport. It's a different setup now. And I don't think any will ever surpass those great names that we've mentioned. As I said, maybe become equal to in terms of their achievements and in terms of their coaching ability. I would argue that Robert Garcia could go in any generation and be a successful coach, and that's probably true of Freddie Roach as well. But that I don't think they can surpass them, because I don't think there's fighters in the modern era that have the level of greatness that we saw that we saw from those kind of names in the past. You know, a lot of the names that I mentioned earlier, the likes of James Toney. You know, a lot of these coaches they find freaks of nature and then they mold them into natural disasters that just run through and devastate, and everybody goes, "Where's this person come from?" You know, and even somebody like Terence Crawford, who is in modern sense a freak in terms of ability, in terms of skill. You know, put him 50 years ago, and he would have been very, very good. Would he have been the absolute best fighter on the planet? Probably not. Um, Probably not. You know, if you put him in with the likes of that generation of Leonard, Hearns, Hagler,
Yeah.
Duran, Aaron Pryor, Alexis Arguello, you know, does he become a four-weight undisputed? I mean, I don't even know if he becomes a world champion. Now, that's not to diminish his abilities because you know how big a fan of him I am. But, you know, even with great coaching, even with great mindset, there's a difference in the generations. And people like to pretend it's not true. People like to pretend boxing is
Just
better.
go back and watch the fights. There's an electric
Absolutely.
draw to the action.
Absolutely. And
Every movement has you.
sorry, it's a bit like soccer. So I'm calling it soccer for your benefit, but football for us British folk. Um, if you watch football from the 1990s, there's so much more flair and charisma and pizzazz about it. It's so much more exciting. People are trying things, they're having fun with it. It's got all of the elements of athleticism without that sort of rigidity, that sort of robotic nature to it, and which is true of modern soccer. And yet and I think boxing is the same. I think the same has happened in boxing. There's far less flair and beauty and artistry to it now, and I think coaching is definitely responsible for a lot of that. And that's why I like again Robert Garcia. Look at what he's done with Bam Rodriguez. He's a beautiful fighter to watch, and I would say personally that I think he is a generational talent far more than Terence Crawford is. I think you could have put Bam Rodriguez 50 years ago, 100 years
Have a
ago,
lot more
and he
success.
still would have been exceptional because what he does is not only technically fundamentally good, it's also uniquely good, which is rare.
Just completely structurally sound, everything fundamentally pretty. It's so good.
And with that kind of that excellence, that flair, that sort of enigmatic kind of how's he done that there? You know, that sort of thing that people go, what, how do you do that? And you have to watch it back 15 times in slow-mo to get it. You know, there's a lot of that. And I'm not sure Terence Crawford does a great deal of that. What he does is everything fundamentally exceptionally well. But you know, to beat Sugar Ray Leonard, to beat Tommy Hearns, you've got to have something uniquely special. And I'm not sure he would have. I'm not sure he would have had that.
All right, we got a few minutes left. Do you have a question I might be able to field?
Yes. So with regards to coaching, okay, so you're obviously an aspiring coach. You have intentions of going into boxing and achieving great things. You have three things that you believe are the most important things that you can do for your fighters. What would those three things be? So if those of you who are listening to this will hear what Shane thinks is important, and maybe that'll be valuable to them.
The very first thing I'm going to do for anybody that comes into their gym is establish a fundamental position. Make sure that their actual boxing shape, how their silhouette, their stance, where they're holding their hands, how they bend their knees. We'll spend a week on it if I have to, just to make sure it's as good as it needs to be. The second thing I'm going to do is just work on a jab. There's like 8 different ways that I personally like to throw a jab, and the simplest one almost nobody knows how to do it. So we're going to sit, we're going to work on position, we're going to work on that jab, and then we're going to work on jabbing and returning back to that position. We're going to respect that position. And then the third thing I'm going to do is start working on footwork. And I know it sounds so simple, but if I can get those 3 things, I can bring you to any low level tournament and win. So, and by footwork, I don't mean we're working on slip step pivots into crosses. We're not doing crazy stuff. I'm talking like breaking down your footwork to 2 counts and maintaining your position through the count. So 1, 2. Are you still in the same position? One, two. Are you still in the same? Not rigid, like glued tight like a mannequin. Stay loose, stay calm. So it's those three things. I'm going to make sure your position is good. We're going to work on the jab. Then we're going to move our feet.
Almost as if you've read a technical guide to boxing fundamentals by Matt Goddard.
It's almost like that's my baseline.
I mean, yeah, as you probably know, I would say exactly the same thing, mate. I would say exactly the same thing. Okay, last point, because we've got probably about a minute, if that. So, last point, from a psychology perspective, what do you think is the most important thing for you to instill in people from the outset?
Loyalty. I don't know if that makes sense, but not like stay here and be with me. Loyalty in the sense that like if I say you can do it, you can do it. Like I don't need the excuses. We'll work on the excuses, but just respect and loyalty. Like
You
if you
mean in
come,
terms of like a commitment to your belief in them and a commitment to your lessons?
yeah, I don't care if you don't think I know what I'm doing. I just want you to come in and believe me when I say that you're not going to die when I tell you to work a little bit harder. Oh, start wheezing or something like that. Like, come on, I got you. We can do this. Like, I know what humans can do. You're not giving me what you can do. I know you can do it. And if you can do that, man, oh, we get so good so fast.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Improvements are possible if you are willing to put the work in. We're gonna have to say goodbye. Thank you to everybody that's tuned in. Appreciate you all. Big up Shane as always. All the details are there somewhere. And we'll catch you for the next one. Another episode of the Matt and Shane Show. Big up everybody. 5 episodes down. Don't forget to check out the rest. Take care.